Hi, this is Coop Dog, doing a video response from Retro Red Steve, who had his from another person. If you get Retro Red Steve, he'll probably point you to the person that he had this video response from. As you can tell, it's Friday the 13th, so I got that lovely fella on the TV for you to have a look at. Basically, it was a video that Retro Red Steve done the other day about horror films and different types of horror films and that. So there was 10 questions and I'm responding to them. I known Retro Red Steve for since we started school, so we have a bit of a tease and a joke about things and that, and I passed a comment on one of the horror films that I kind of liked, and he was sort of said it was really stupid, but anyway. So the questions are 1 to 10, and the first one was, what was my first horror film I ever watched? Truthfully, I was a bit not into horror films when I was a kid. Freddy Krueger used to scare me and different things like that, so I was a bit of a late thing to horror films, but I do remember watching a few when I was younger. Probably the old Hammer horrors, such as the Christopher Lee Draculas and Vincent Price's and all the really old horror movies from the sort of 70s, 60s, 70s type of era. So I couldn't actually pinpoint my first horror film, but I would probably say it was one of them kind of horror films. The old, like Christopher Lee, Vincent Price, Peter Cushing type ones. 3 favourite horror films. Well, I must admit, one of my favourites is Final Destination, the first one. I mean, the rest of them are pretty good as well, but the first one I really enjoyed. First time I watched that was in the cinema in Blackpool. It was a group of us watched it, and the bus scene just made us jump 6 foot in the air. Brilliant film. So that's one. Second favourite film I'd say was Scream. Again, the first one was just brought back the slasher films of old, and it just goes from there. And so that was another one. And the third favourite film, I've had so many that I've liked in the past, but I'd have to go right back to A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. Again, I like the first one. The second one I didn't really watch, but Dream Warriors in the Mental Institute with Patricia Arquette and the famous primetime quote. Brilliant. I did enjoy Dream Warriors, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, so that probably be my 3 favourite horror films. The last horror film I saw, I can't really say I can remember watching a horror film recently. Probably, if I look up at my collection, probably the last horror film I probably watched was Zombieland 2. I know it's not really a horror film, it's more of a comedy, but I think that was the last one I watched. Prior to that though, I think it might have been Freddy vs Jason or one of the slasher films that I've from the past. So, but yeah, my favourite horror sequel, again, I would probably say Dream Warriors from Nightmare on Elm Street series, Nightmare on Elm Street 3. So, favourite comedy horror. Well, I can agree with Retro Red on this, Retro Red Steve on this, that Shaun of the Dead I can watch over and over again. It is my favourite. I have got some honourable mentions, which this is where the debate come from. I did like Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I know it was cheesy, I know it was corny, but Killer Clowns from Outer Space is up there as an honourable mention, along with the aforementioned Zombieland double. Zombieland and Zombieland Double Tap. Two very good comedic horror films. Favourite Stephen King adaptation? Now, I haven't really watched many Stephen King adaptations, so I can't really say or comment on it. Obviously you've got your It's, your Misery, your Shining, but I know it's not really a horror film as such, but there's two actually. There's one which is Stand By Me, which isn't a horror film but it's still a Stephen King, and there's another one that you'll be surprised was written by Stephen King but under his other pseudonym, The Running Man. Brilliant film. Not horror film, I know. I understand they're not both horror films, but brilliant. Favourite remake or reboots? Now, I'm not one for remakes or reboots. I've got the few that I like, which are not horror films, but I did like the Denzel Washington Magnificent 7 remake and reboots. But for horror films, a bit ropey. But saying that, there was The Thing. The 1980s Thing with Kurt Russell. That is a remake of an old movie, and I like that. That was my favourite remake of a horror film, The Thing, from the 1980s. Favourite black and white horror movie? Again, you're looking right back at some really old ones here. But I would probably say Night of the Living Dead. The original George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead. Black and white film. Brilliant film. Again, going back to the sequels, Dawn of the Dead, the original one, I liked. Again, the remake was okay, but I preferred the original Dawn of the Dead to that. But black and white one, Night of the Living Dead. Horror film I disliked. Now, there was a few out there that probably I didn't like that much. But I'd probably say a horror film I disliked was probably either Halloween 3, because although it was its own film, it did take off away from the Halloween franchise, and then after that they just sort of went downhill, until obviously the recent ones. I haven't seen the recent one yet, but I've heard it's pretty good. Or if I'm going to say a horror film I disliked, it'd probably be Jason Goes to Hell, I think, is the one with the slug monster type thing that infected other people before it became Jason. I thought that was a bit too, I don't know, a bit too silly. It was, I mean, it took the whole thing right out to the ballpark. There was 2 redeeming features, but not much in that one. So, but I'd probably initially go with the they're the two then I'd probably say I disliked more. So that was my responses to the horror films that on this Friday the 13th. It's almost over. It's about 20 to 7, so I got through Friday the 13th. I hope you enjoy. Again, Retro Red Steve and all the others he follows, follow them. They probably got a better video than what I got. But thank you for listening.